Welcome to Inclusion Influencers, brought to you by the National Alliance for Accessible Golf. Our goal with these interviews is to highlight the people and organizations in the game of golf that are making a difference in the lives of individuals with disabilities. This includes golfers out there leading the way by showing others what is possible, organizations that dedicate resources and facilities to bring people into the game, and others that support, educate, inform, and perhaps inspire you to learn more and get yourself and others involved. Golf is truly a game for all abilities. Our April 2026 inclusion influencer is Tim Wilkes, PGA, Senior Manager, Store Services and Experience for PGA Tour Superstore out of Roswell, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. He's been doing this for over 20 years and is leading their efforts across the country to train and certify their staff of professional fitters as adaptive golf fitters and more. Tim and PGA Tour Superstore are on a mission to bring golfers of all abilities into the game, and their additional efforts related to adaptive golf are noteworthy. I was fortunate to meet Tim in 2024 in the early stages of the development and delivery of the education they are going to provide to custom club fitters at their stores around the country. And I'm really excited to talk with you today. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Well, you were somebody before you came to PGA Tour Superstore, right? So let's start with who Tim was before the PGA Tour Superstore days. Kind of, where'd you go up? I know you played a little bit of golf back in the day, and perhaps you went to Mississippi State, if I checked your bio out correctly at some point. So fill me in on Tim before he became a PGA pro and what kind of drove you this direction.
I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin called Watertown, about halfway between Madison and Milwaukee. I started playing golf at an early age. Actually, my mother has always told people that I lost my pacifier on the golf course. So if that tells you anything, I've been playing quite a while. I did play in high school. Was a Gosling was our mascot, so that's something that I've always liked to share. That it's probably a unique one that nobody else has. It's not even a full-grown goose; it's a baby goose. But we love it. We embraced it. But golf was something very important to me at an early age. The big golfer in my family actually is my mother. She was very competitive and very athletic. In fact, she won the club championship at Watertown Country Club while she was over 12 weeks pregnant with me. So maybe that had an influence on it really at an early age. No, when I was young and growing up and just falling in love with the game, I started to have some challenges where I was breaking my ankles. I broke each ankle 4 times. And then sort of dismissed it as me being an overactive child. So that was sort of all that was really tested on kind of what was going on with me. And so at the time, golf, I wanted to play every sport that I could, that my brothers and friends played, but I literally couldn't get a physical signed because of the challenges that I was having, other than to play golf. So it not only was I already passionate about it, but it became sort of the sport for me to get involved with.
Yeah, and so ankles breaking and some of those things are never good for a golf swing for sure. And so at some point, you decided as you were growing up, whether in high school or even in college, that you wanted to be in the golf business. Was it always kind of in the back of your mind to be in the golf business? Obviously, you were a professional in some other capacities prior to coming to PGA Tour Superstore. So kind of what drove you specifically in that direction?
So going back to just what I was talking about earlier, and I do want to explain something there that I think I left out, and that ankle breaking that I was mentioning led to a diagnosis at age 13 of muscular dystrophy and having Charcot-Marie tooth disease, which is a neurological disorder affecting your lower limbs. And so we were able to kind of find out that that was the cause of those issues. And so for me, I started to embrace that diagnosis with doing everything I could to feel as normal as I possibly could. And golf made me feel normal. I never really was. I was able to play pretty good at an early age, and so golf never really made me feel like I had a disability. And so it was always important to me that way. And so as I grew up and literally grew up on the golf course, I started to watch all of the golf professionals that were at our golf course, and just wanting to get involved. I mean, I started out just picking golf balls on the driving range for nothing. I just thought it was cool to be able to do that, as my parents were having dinner. I'd be out there shagging golf balls or hitting golf balls into the range from the sides, and it was really fun for me to just be around it. And then as I grew up, more responsibility was given to me, and I got my first job at the golf course there, mostly cleaning golf clubs and helping members with their needs. But it's really what got me my first job in the industry. And as soon as I graduated from high school, I knew I wanted to be like those guys and that I saw at the golf course and get into this business. And so I was at the time there was only four schools that had a relationship with the PGA of America, and Mississippi State was one of them. And listening to the recruiters over the phone, and me never have really left the state of Wisconsin prior to that, hearing a Southern accent was pretty attractive to me, and I think the rest of it was really history after that.
Yeah, so I'm going to touch one more bit briefly on, age 13, and then we're going to certainly get into some of the things that the PGA Tour Superstore is doing now under your
Mhm.
strong suggestions and leadership. At age 13, when this diagnosis came about, right? You're already playing golf. How did that alter, if at all, at that time in your life, the way you were playing golf as far as how you could swing? Was anything more of a challenge, less of a challenge, or you just kind of grew naturally into playing with what you had? How did you approach that at that age, at that part of your life where we're all so influenced by what's going on around us and where we want to be, who we want to be, and grow when we grow up?
Mm. So with the type of dystrophy that I have, it's a very slow progression. Obviously I told you about the break in my ankles, but I recovered from those breaks pretty similarly to anybody, right? I had the cast on, and then it healed, and then I kind of put myself back out there. So as far as my golf game goes, I never really focused in on the challenges. I just tried to advance the golf ball as best I could, and my balance was never great. So it was really learning how to stay as still as I could as I made my moves, so that I would keep myself more stable. But honestly, at that age, and honestly up until I was finished with college, it wasn't as much of a challenge to do it different than really any of the other guys and gals that I was around. So I didn't really feel too many effects of it then.
Yeah. It's funny how we're, influenced when we're younger. Like my dad was a teacher, right? And a coach, and I went to small schools because he was a headmaster, so I got to go to really, really nice, unique new schools that we could not have afforded to go to if my dad had not been a teacher or the headmaster at that school. So it was a unique education. So when I headed out to college, I mean, in my brain, I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to be a teacher, and most of that was probably just because of the way I grew up. I grew up in a gym. I grew up around a gym, around sports, and so I always knew I wanted to be around sports. So you kind of grew up in a golf family, and here you still are in a golf family. It just shows the power of influence that families can have. In most of the time positive directions we would hope. But I opted for the Navy for about 22 years, and so it took me a long time to kind of get back into the sports side of things. And quite honestly, I'd only played golf for a couple of years between age 10 and 12. And I just had this passion to get into the golf industry when I retired from the service. So a unique sort of path. But the buddies I played golf with were Mason Rudolph Jr., from Tennessee, the son of the pro golfer Mason Rudolph and John P., whose was grandfather was associated with Austin P State University, and those guys were beating me down on the golf course like you could not imagine. They were already shooting in the 30s at age 10. We're playing appropriate tees, and I'm like trying to break 60. I don't think I broke 60 till I was 18. I don't know how old I was, but anyway, long story short is it's interesting how that influenced your trajectory as far as how you were brought up.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. It was, my parents, or my father specifically, was a lot older. I was a love child, not a planned one, but a loved one, and so anything I could do that I could do with them, that I could, be a part of and do it as a family. It was special. And the golf course that I grew up on was small, and really everybody there was family. You couldn't get away with anything. Somebody knew my mother or my dad, and so it was a real amazing opportunity to have a family of people that poured into me and encouraged me to continue on into golf. And it, I have to say, I said earlier how my game progressed around getting better at golf, and not so much of what I felt was a challenge due to my disability. Well, I thought for the longest time, and I think pride comes into play here, that I was hiding my disability from the world, that only I knew about it, because it was so subtle. I felt, as in the progression was slow. It wasn't to where I needed assistance to walk in any way. So I was wearing the same shoes, doing the same thing, never had to really adjust to do that. Now, that's me thinking that nobody else saw this. So I realized at a late age, embarrassingly a lot later than I thought, that others knew that I had challenges. I refused to admit that I did. And so as I, got older and thought I was hiding it more, that's really when the world of adaptive golf came to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, and it's certainly different. But in some recent news regarding professional players, Gary Woodland, when we talk about different types of disabilities, whether it's mobility impairments or intellectual, neurological, whatever it could be, veterans, that have PTSD, that is a drain on their uh, abilities, especially socially, to be engaged and involved, which is obviously a real problem. I just found it interesting that he had been given a clean bill of health, right? And but still that what that brought on him was this belief that it ain't over yet. And then to kind of carry that around with him was an interesting story, and it was really great to see, his performance this past week, and trying to get back on the horse, because things like that just don't go away overnight. In my experience around folks that have experienced this, but let's get into some really cool golf stuff that you're doing. So obviously, I had the privilege of visiting with you in Georgia. When you were doing some of your education that you had already launched. So that was a much appreciated invitation for sure. Because there's nothing better than driving around Atlanta. I can tell you what. Is there anything better at all? But
Wow.
so, yeah, let's. And I come from DC. I come from the DC area, so that's saying a lot. But let's talk about a program that goes way beyond the way I'm going to say it right now, that you've developed for fitters, and the health and wellness connections you incorporate with therapists as part of this program, and honestly, just the amazing energy that I saw as just kind of an observer in the room that day with these fitters that you had brought in from around the country. So let's just kind of break down that program a little bit, and kind of the nexus of it, and where you're at now and where you want to be in the future with it.
Okay. Well, I guess the first thing is to kind of go back to where it all started with the Superstore. And I started there as a golf instructor, and never really um, had a focus on the adaptive community. I was trained and able to teach, and was doing so, and all of my clientele were able-bodied people. Never really thought twice about it, right? Me in my head. And it wasn't until, somebody from the corporate office here at the Superstore, and this was 20 years ago, reached out to me because they had gotten a call from a customer whose father had had a stroke and was just passionate about getting him back out there. He had a standing group on Thursdays, and it just tore her apart to see that her dad was unable to go back out there and do that. And they asked me, and it's interesting. They asked me before I even admitted that I had a disability, that they thought I could help. And when you see the emotions of it, and this young lady came to the store with her father, and he was, not believing at all that this was where he should be. He was still in denial, had no idea that he could golf again. And it just completely ignited my desire to learn, how can I have the skills, I know how to teach the golf swing, but how do I apply it to somebody that has such a limited mobility? Everything you're taught about, all the positions, the key to balance, everything that I knew about golf, I need to almost throw out the window and start all over with somebody that here's where he's at, and let's meet him where he's at. And I did an enormous amount of research and putting myself in front of different diagnosis. And I found this through the Adaptive Golf Association. At the time, it was named the Sonny Ackerman Adaptive Golf Foundation. And they had a monthly clinic here in Atlanta. And I went out to that next clinic and saw what they were doing, and I was immediately hooked. And after that, had the opportunity to get with a lot of different medical facilities, Shepherd's and Emory here in town, to just learn different diagnoses and different type of ailments that could possibly benefit or play the game of golf. And as I did that, I was very, very much supported by the Superstore, as far as going out there and reaching out in the community to do that. And as the years went by, and I was able to really put myself out there and become a service to the community, to helping people with that, that we decided that the company decided that this was something that we really wanted to do more than just me, right? I could only affect so many people. We wanted to make sure we could do the same thing throughout the United States, where all of our stores are. And after I'd gone through multiple different trainings, whether it was through PGA Hope, or through the Georgia State Golf Association, and the Adaptive Golf Association, I was able to go through training and help edit training and kind of add my knowledge to it. And as we were progressing, had the opportunity to work with Ping manufacturer on developing an adaptive fitting system. Now, fitting was always something that I was very involved with at a early stage in my career. So it really was something special for me to be able to go out and help the engineers at Ping design equipment to help all of these different types of limited mobility that we were dealing with. And so it made sense then to grow that into another opportunity to fit people. And that's kind of where we started to focus in on making sure that we can provide equipment for people and help them get that to help play the game. And that is when we were able to develop training here, very specific for our fitters, to be able to handle anybody with injury or diagnosis that we could through equipment. And so that's why I started with that. And I saw a lot of the different trainings that I was going through focus mostly on the instruction. And I felt that there was a need to add equipment because I know how much the value of equipment is and how equipment can affect motion. So it only made sense to do that. There's been so many amazing other pioneers that have been helping with adaptive golf from an instruction standpoint, and I really felt that the need was to work on the equipment as well, and that's where we started with all that, and um, yeah.
Yeah, so I think I know this number, but presently, as far as store wise, you guys are I think moving towards the 100 number nationally, give or take. Is that close? And then how many? I know you've got a certain number of stores out there right now. So how are you progressing as far as the number of stores where you've got these fitters, trained now? When do you expect to, kind of at least have them ramped up everywhere around the country or at all the stores you have? What's your projections on this?
Well, we just last month we opened our 81st store in Buckhead, uh, downtown Atlanta, and we have very aggressive plans for growth. We've got at least 5 to 7 stores again this year, and probably equal that, if not more, in the following. I think that we would love to get to that 100 store goal here very quickly. Um, so that's really exciting from that. As far as for the those that are trained, we are currently in 28 different states. We definitely know that we need to be in more, and are in the process of making that happen. But I wanted to first start out to make sure that we had somebody trained in every state that we have a store. So we started out first couple classes to make sure that we covered every state we had a store in. And then after that, it was just backfilling as many as we possibly can. So now we are currently at 48 stores that have somebody that has been trained in there. And we have plans this year to add another 30 to that. And I feel pretty confident we may be able to get them all in by the end. And so I would say within the next year and a half, every one of our stores will have somebody in there that is trained to be able to help anybody with any type of injury or diagnosis.
Yeah, I really, again, having the opportunity to sit in on, one of your classes a year and a half or so ago, I really enjoyed it. And what was really, I like the science of it anyway, just kind of, I've always, enjoyed that. But, I think the approach where you're, bringing in physical therapists and talking about, the importance of understanding it. Certainly, all golf coaches need to understand what a person's ability is to swing, and it doesn't matter if that person has a disability or not. They have an ability to do something. What is that? What is that range? How can we do this to make sure that with all golfers, we're not doing something that would potentially injure them in any way? That's why we do evaluations before that. But I thought that was a really good touch. And then I think, really, being in that simulator environment where obviously you have some very swank and sophisticated simulation capabilities at your corporate office for sure, and even in your stores, it's such a nice controlled environment where kind of everything is right there. It's set up, it's ready to go. And the fact that y'all brought in, some golfers with disabilities, many of whom have already been playing golf, but some who are kind of scratching the surface again, and you bring them in, and your students are getting some really, really good hands-on training. And that is, as you well know, I think just beyond important. And I think anyone that's working with a golfer of any ability, I think, especially with younger coaches or fitters, there's always this little bit of a hesitation. Okay, what can I say? What can I do? Can I touch this part of this individual? Should I get permission? This person has a prosthetic leg. What should I say about it? Should I not say anything about it? And I think it's interesting to watch how these fitters and coaches evolve from maybe their first meeting with an individual to how quickly comfortable they become just talking with them like they are any other student because they are, the leg is something you got to talk about. The arm is something you got to talk about, or the lack of it. So talk about that a little bit because I just saw so much, passion with these fitters that ranged in age from, 20 to 50 plus. And so I thought it was just really cool what I'm seeing there.
Oh, well, thank you. First of all, I again, I think everything. There's a village of support that's out here that is going and trying to help the adaptive community. And I've seen some amazing stuff that was out there, and I went through again a lot of different trainings to kind of just educate myself to understand, but also to support also these other instructors that were putting it on, but also my fellow participants, and the majority of the first training that I went to was for instruction, right? On how can we instruct and help people that have disabilities. And I'm in a room with fellow professionals that know how to teach, that have gone through training, that got their PGA membership, and are very high level performers there. But yet to see them in this environment, it was sort of like uh, they've been taught how to build a box, or excuse me, how to work within a box, and now they had to learn how to build a box, if you know what I mean. And,
Yeah.
and the biggest hurdle that was happening in all these trainings that I saw, and the questions and the doubts and the insecurities that people were having was, you know, understanding the diagnosis or the injury, understanding what a person could do, what you don't want to hurt them, so there's always that fear of doing that, and you don't want to offend them, and I think a lot of people innocently they don't know any better, and they may say something that it's not sensitive, but they wouldn't realize it, so I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt that way. But what I noticed was is that the biggest obstacle was the diagnosis, is like understanding what these other people are going through from their end, right? And so in those process, I was able to meet some physical therapists and some doctors that understood the benefits of using golf as a rehabilitative tool, and listening to them and understanding all the different types of, I mean, there's just unlimited, and not one diagnosis is the same as the other one. Even if they have the exact same diagnosis, everybody's body acts a little bit differently. And so it's really understanding that. Now I have an advantage. I know it, and I believe it's a gift. My disability sort of allows me to kind of get through a wall that maybe an able-bodied golf professional wouldn't um, have the luxury of. And that is, they can see me walking around, and they can see the challenges that I have. And it's sort of like opens up the communication lines for where if I can say, hey, try this, they know, hey, this is somebody that comes from, having a challenge and knows what I'm going through. So I'm going to listen, or I'm going to try. And so when I saw the effect that I was having that way, I knew that if I could be a part of a training, if I could help edit this training, the first thing I would do is I would bring in the doctors and therapists to try to educate these golf professionals on what they're going to be dealing with. So then they can take their skills and their knowledge. We mentioned that our fitters have gone through this training, and some golf instructors for sure. That's to come. But the fitters, these are the best that we have. These are in our studio environments. So these people are unbelievable in their ability to be able to fit golf equipment. And I've watched them, and I've seen the training that they get to partake in from our vendor partners, and technology partners that are out there, and to see, and I'm very proud of what we do as a company from a fitting standpoint. And I knew these guys and gals all knew how to fit, but what they didn't know is, what it's like to have an injury, a traumatic injury or diagnosis, and now be able to take the knowledge that they have and apply it to the mobility that's in front of them. And it's the most emotional thing to do. But when you started training out with understanding different diagnosis and different injuries, to look at everybody's face that's going through that class, if you experienced it, the first day of the training is like I'm scaring them, right? They're like, "What are you doing? I am not a doctor. I'm not going to be able to know that this person, all these things." And I could tell, that the first class that we ever did with it, I was like, "Uh-oh." I just scared these guys out of it. But then they started to see the method to the madness after I introduced the diagnosis. We then simulated it, so we put them in the environment to be able to feel what it's like to have a limb impairment, to have a visual impairment, to be hitting from a seated position. So I needed them to feel it and do it. And a lot of the training that I'd seen before had some simulation in it, and I loved that part of it. And so I wanted to kind of build off of what the doctors talk about, the bodies and how they function after injury or diagnosis, and then to go into, okay, now this is how it feels from their end of it. And then the icing of the cake, which was literally, I kind of had the opportunity to design this the way that I wanted to. I don't take for granted the fact that it's taken me years of making mistakes, right? Helping people, and until I got to where I understood it better. But I wanted to fast forward that process for everybody there. All the things that I didn't know that I had to learn, I wanted them to experience right away. And now that they did, they kind of understood it. And then I end the training with bringing in some adaptive athletes from the local programs here that I absolutely love and support. And they come in, and we actually have some real fittings that they do by the end of the week. We go out and support the clinic. So I schedule my training to be when they have the clinic out here at River Pines, so that they can see what a community program can do, and the difference that it makes. And taking out some fitting equipment to the clinic and seeing all those participants just light up because they can't believe somebody's taking the time to learn how to specialize and fit them. It was, it's emotional to talk about it. It's emotional to see it. Every time I see it, I get emotional. But it's that powerful part of it that pushes these people, and I mean the fitters that we have here in the company, to want to do whatever they can to try to help anybody play the game, because it's special. It's more than a game. It changes lives. It really does. And so if we can be any part of that, it's pretty special. And I made sure that the training kind of shouted that from the rooftops.
Yeah, and well said, and it definitely does. And so, as you get your fitters qualified, you mentioned, some coach stuff down the road as well. But, I think if and I'm the furthest thing from an expert, but obviously you were a big brand guy with the PGA Tour Superstore, and you're the store experience guy now. And so, PGA Tour Superstore does not put stores in the middle of nowhere. They put them in places where there is a uh, community around them, probably a somewhat strong community of golf opportunities. And so, you know, how do you see the work you're doing uh, influencing that particular area store may be in, as far as in the growth of the game? Certainly, it's going to be effective for bringing golfers of all abilities into the game because of what your fitters and coaches can do. But specifically related to adaptive golf, how do you see this really helping a community really expand what they're doing in any part of the country they may happen to be?
Hmm, it's a good question. I think one of the biggest takeaways that I've gotten from being involved in adaptive golf are community programs that I've been able to be a part of and volunteer at and help put together. Because you see everybody in every walk of life. We've had you know, youth homes, and we've had adult services homes come out. We've had the VA. We've had stroke survivor groups come out. We have. I mean, you just name all the different. Emory has brought people out. Shepherd Spinal Center. I mean, you name it. All of these different facilities and programs that are out there. You know, they rally around this one, day a month where they just share golf and share each other. And, some of them, it may just be the driving range and they never get beyond the driving range. Some of them may have aspirations to go out and to play some holes with it. And some, are getting to the point to where they realize what they can do and could be competitive with it. So it is fun to see golf in all of its phases at once with this. And, communities, it was so diverse to see this. You see, if you go to a community program, it is the hardest thing to be able to, a lot of the times, decipher between who is a volunteer and who's a participant, because they're the same. They rally around each other. You're going to see somebody that may have, an amputation that's working with somebody in a seated position, and you're like, well, they're they
Right.
rise up, and the community, the veteran community, it's just amazing to see, that camaraderie that they have, that fellowship and brotherhood that they had prior, and now they can share those same experiences. They're outside. It's just amazing how it does that. And so knowing that these community programs are what it is in my heart, now knowing that we are opening up stores, and our goal is to be a part of that community, right? We want to support that community. We want to be a beacon for help in that community. Everybody that comes into our stores, we want to be able to help. And now to be able to add, people that have a disability to that list, there's really nobody that can't be helped in our stores, and that's something I'm very proud of. And I think that as we grow, that's what I would say is the most important thing about what we do, is to become a resource of support.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I really only got one more, I guess, legitimate question. I wouldn't call it a hard question. Definitely going to end with a couple of rapid fire questions just to kind of lighten the moment, as they say. But you've been around golf for a while. You've been certainly around adaptive golf on a personal and a professional level for a while. So, when we think in terms of the golf industry, or maybe even within that industry as a whole, the adaptive golf community, but we're all, all golfers of all abilities, right? Um, but more specific, I think with adaptive golf, where do you think the community is, or the industry is kind of getting it right now? And, if you had to kind of identify maybe one or two areas where you think, okay, there are opportunities for improvement here. Doesn't mean it's wrong what's going on, but maybe things need to move faster in a certain area, something like that. Any thoughts on that as far as those elephants in the room that the industry needs to kind of rally around a little bit better and get moving in a better direction?
You know, that's it's a really good question. And I could go in a lot of different directions with the way, that I feel like the industry needs to focus. There's a lot of growth coming to the game, focusing in on working with women, getting more women playing the game, getting kids, juniors playing the game. I mean, our owner said it, I think, perfectly, in that, the youth of the world represents 30% of the population, but they're 100% of our future. So, I totally see that. And there's a lot going on. I think the industry is doing a very good job of reaching out to kids, and getting and being a lot more sensitive and understanding to women in the game. And I think then the other growth pillars that they're focusing in on, people of color, and those that are adaptive players, people that have a disability and diagnosis. They're focusing in on expanding the game and making it more accessible for everybody out there. And I think that is a huge win. Um, the couple things that you take for granted in that is that your core group of golfers, the kind of the goddess here, so to speak, they're also important, right? So I think sometimes the focus gets put on these new growth, and we stop taking care of the core people that if you look statistically are leaving the game, versus the growth points that we just talked about. And I think adaptive golf is one of those things that if you understand it, you would know that those aging demographics that had that standing tee time on a Thursday or a Saturday morning, or I worked in a course one where I was Wednesday and the banks closed at noon and everybody was out at the golf course. It was it was something. But you start to see and hear different people that are leaving the game, and some of them are leaving because financial decisions that they're making, or they're a parent that picks and their kid has picked a different sport. And if you've been around any of the other competitive kids, baseball and football and basketball, I mean, it is a time commitment, and you can't really do both, right? So there's some that are leaving it that way, but the ones that really um, you know get me to the core is when I know what I know, and helping those with limited mobility play this game of golf. Then to see people leave the game of golf when it is just, understanding that maybe it's their arthritis that is making it to where they can't play around, or their back, or there's something that life and the gift of aging. I know not everyone will say that, but it's a gift. And you're every one of us is going to end up at one point or another being an adaptive golfer. And if you understood, it's not just the major, visible, noticeable
Hmm.
disabilities, right? People, and I was one of them, right? I don't have it as bad as anybody else, so therefore I don't need that, or that's for somebody else that's a lot more damaged than me, or I can't play the exact same way that I did. I don't hit my driver 300 yards anymore, and I don't, play from the tips anymore, so I'm not a golfer. Or what, if I can't do that, I just don't want to play. And then those are the things that I hear that just absolutely tear me apart, because you go and you work with somebody that had a traumatic injury, or that had a diagnosis that progressed later on in life, and they're trying to find a way to golf. And yet there's people out there that don't know, because the awareness isn't out there, that golf is there for you. It doesn't matter if you have a physical decline that causes you pain to be out there and play. There's no reason to stop. We can help you adapt. And so I would say honestly, that's that group that I think we can do better, is to try to keep them playing. And we know how, because we're introducing new people to it through these ways. We need to make sure that we educate those that are already here, that have left the game, that it's still a game they can play.
Yeah, really, and I agree with you in a strong way with that stuff. I think, I think far too many operators, they're doing great stuff, but I think far too many are get so focused sometimes on who's going to walk in the door with a disability that they may not be prepared for, which is not that complicated to prepare for them, to be honest, right? But they're many are not seeing their existing population at their golf course that's kind of aging out right in front of them, and they're providing no solutions to keep them in the game. So really valid point. So let's, we're going to shift gears here at the very end. I've really enjoyed speaking with you and catching up with you again. And honestly, you and I'm lucky I get to talk to you pretty regularly about different things because you're a really smart guy. So anytime I talk to you, I walk away a lot smarter about some stuff. But there's a lot of hot sports activities going on in the world right now besides golf and PGA Tour Superstore. So just a couple rapid fire questions for you, Tim. Who are you rooting for? Well, I guess it's a trick question. I guess A, who were you rooting for? But who are you rooting for to win the NCAA championship this year? And is your team already long gone?
Florida has failed me, so yes, my team is out of it. However, um, if I can get Michigan to beat Arizona, then everyone in my bracket or everyone in my pool, their pick to win will be out. So then the battle for the next run up, I think I have a good chance.
It's
But
funny
I
you would
think
say that.
Michigan looks pretty hard to beat.
It's funny you would say that because I run a little family pool for my couple sisters of mine and some nieces and nephews, and I was in this boat. Tennessee wrecked me a little bit, but I was still alive. I was still alive and had a certain percent chance to win until Duke failed to break a press and then got destroyed with a 50-foot shot or however far it was. That was it. The pool was over. We're not even making it to the final four in our pool. That like flipped all the cards. And the one person out of the three that really had a chance to win had Arizona. You know, because Michigan, if Michigan was going to beat Arizona, I believe they would have, but whatever. So who wins the Masters this year?
Ooh. Um, you know, I I really think that it's going to come down to uh, making putts there. It always is, and right now it's a tough one. There's a lot of good guys coming in. Their games are coming around, but I still think that it's a place where Scheffler can really turn it on and bring it in. So I think he's going to have a pretty good chance of winning this thing.
Well, great lead into our final rapid fire question. Do you think that Scotty Scheffler will, and I love Scotty Scheffler, but do you believe he'll still be the number one golfer at the end of the year?
I do not. I do
Ooh,
not. There's a lot of uh, players that are chasing him and that are learning what they need to do better so that they can put themselves in positions like he is. I think that he's got to figure out how to start a golf tournament.
yeah.
He's this first two rounds, he's barely making the cut, and then he's shooting lights out the last two rounds. That's not going to last, right? He's going to back up some of these times, so he's got to learn to figure out somehow to get that game going sooner. But I do not think he'll be number one at the end of the year.
Yeah, I guess he's going to have to, it looks like he's going to have a infant caddy suit. He's got another
Right.
one on the way, right? And,
Yes.
random thought at the end here, and then we got to wrap it up. I wish it's probably out there, but I would love to see the statistics of Jack Nicklaus's performance when he was a pro pitted against say a 1 year period after he had each of his children while he was in the business playing golf coming up because
Yep.
when you look at some really really amazing golfers today, who knows it could be injury, it could be a range of things, but in a lot of cases some of the golfers right now we're used to seeing showing up have all got brand new families because they're that age group. And, traveling is a lot easier now than it used to be, but there are also a lot more demands on tour players than there used to be as far as, work. So I'm always intrigued by that. Okay. Who can handle that and rise above it? Because obviously they've got to have a very supportive family that, embraces the lifestyle of being part of a tour golfer's family. Scheffler seems to have that on lockdown to a certain extent, but who of us really knows what's going on behind the scenes? We
Well, right. Well, I think you also touched on it too of the amazing uh, career that Jack Nicklaus had. I mean, you mentioned he's had all those kids, he did all the traveling, but he won in every decade. If you the statistics, I don't know that everybody looks at them, but it just blows my mind, especially when there's always that conversation of, Tiger Woods to Jack Nicklaus,
Mhm.
who's it's the best. And if you really looked at all the statistics, it's not close.
Yeah.
And as far as the amount of time that Jack was able to be at the level that he was, if you just looked at how many second places, how many top fives he had on top
Yeah.
of 18 majors and all the wins, it's mind blowing what he was able to do. And not to mention, I'm not minimizing Tiger. I mean, shoot, he's had within that 4 year span, he had almost three Hall of Fame careers individually if you were to break the years down. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
just amazing what they've done for the game, and how the game is what it is right now is because of both of them. So I think it's exciting, but you're right. Having that family support, and Jack and his wife have obviously shown that through all the years, what they do together. We do the Play Yellow campaign for them here at the stores, and it's just a pleasure to be able to support charities that mean so much to them. So it's obviously I have a bias. You ask me who's the best.
Listen, Tim, we're at our time here, and I really appreciate it. And I think we've hopefully touched on everything that we wanted to speak about regarding your incredible efforts in PGA Tour Superstore's support and involvement in that for sure. Any other parting shots for our listeners? If not, we'll call it a day.
Uh, no, I would just say that stay involved and help spread the word is all I would say.
Well, that's a great way for us to wrap it up today. And Tim, I enjoyed speaking with you, and we will talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.